All right. Hey there, everyone. I am Orly, and this is Noelle. And we are here to talk to you. We're from Prevail, and we're here to talk to you about compliance. So I'm asking the questions. Noelle is answering them, all these questions about compliance, which is great because if it were the other way around, it'd be really screwed up. Like, you wouldn't want to hear what I have to say. You really want to hear what Noelle has to say about compliance. So this is our new show. We hope all the audience out there likes it. And this is going to be great. All right. So Noelle, first of all, you're new to Prevail. So why don't you just let everyone know a little bit about you and why you are the most awesome compliance person at Prevail.
Well, I don't know about being the most awesome compliance person. I don't even think that's a title I would want anyway. But yeah, I just came on board with Prevail this year. I'm so excited to be here. It's such a great company to work for. I've worked in the DoD for, oh man, it feels like about 100 years. I think that everybody who's worked in the DoD probably feels that way sometimes. I've managed,
even if it's just a day, like that felt like 100 years.
It still feels like 100 years. It does.
Right.
Truly, I've managed almost exclusively IT programs for pretty much my whole career and with the DoD. And I have done quite a bit when it comes to compliance, also having gone through the process myself of getting, an audit and having to get an SSP together and all the documentation. Then I truly do understand the pain points that pretty much everyone out there in the DIB is feeling right now. Definitely understand that.
And that's why we're asking you the questions, like I said, right? Not me.
I still think you do a great job if we ask
really?
you questions. I do.
I'd be just another pretty face.
Well, we'll try it this way this time. Maybe next time we'll switch it up.
We'll keep it real. All right. So we have a show today that we're going to call Two Truths and a Lie, otherwise known as Why CMMC 2.0 Makes Compliance Easier. And we're going to tell two truths about compliance being easier and one lie. And you, the audience, get to figure it out. All right. So the first one is, okay, CMMC 2.0 drops 20 compliance controls. So it now only has 110 rather than 130. And it has only 14 control families rather than 17, which makes family reunions, I'm sure, a lot easier to manage. So why don't you explain how those two changes, those, and they're really just tied into one another, how that makes compliance easier?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that's really nice, I mean, obviously there's the very straightforward answer. 110 is a smaller number than 130. Who knew?
So that's true.
So if you have
truth in advertising.
So if you have 20 less than you did before, that's 20 less things you have to worry about. They're all sort of, what happened essentially is that the 20 that they removed were really repetitive, or they kind of figured out that those were already sort of addressed in other controls and that kind of thing. So they removed those. The families were the same thing. So the 14 families you have now are the same that NIST does. And the numbers are the same as NIST. That's another way that it makes it simpler. NIST has been the standard since, I believe, 2017 for everybody.
It says December 2017, if you look at the literature.
There you go. Perfect. So, for the past, 5 years, everybody's had to deal with NIST 800-171 or should have been, maybe is a better way of putting, dealing with NIST 800-171 compliance. So really it was the natural progression of CMMC to sort of align with that, to just make it that much easier for the DIB, since that's stuff that they should already have been doing anyway.
Right. All right. So that's a truth.
Yes, that is a 100% truth. Yes.
That's 100% truth. All right. So that's not the lie.
Nope, that's not it.
All right.
Maybe the next one.
So next point, how does CMMC 2.0 make compliance easier? So there are POAMS, plan of action and milestones. Let's not forget the milestones.
No.
So how do POAMS make compliance easier?
Well, for one, there wasn't POAMS before, which was
kind of POAMS.
Exactly. You couldn't have a POAM. It was actually a huge bone of contention in the entire defense industry base. Everybody was sort of like, well, wait a minute, how am I supposed to get better if I can't have a plan to get better? Right.
You just have to get perfect.
You just had to be perfect out the gate every time, because that is always how life works. You're always
right. Like I never cheat on my diet.
No, never. It's never going to happen. You're always going to be absolutely perfect and eat exactly what you're supposed to eat every single day.
Salad every day.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. And there are some of us who maybe that's true, and bless them, because I can't live like that either. But good for them, and that's awesome.
I'm going to run 5 miles every day.
Exactly. No, yeah. These are things that it's just not realistic to assume that any company, especially a small or medium-sized business, I mean, big businesses are just as guilty of this, but small and medium, I think it happens more often. You don't really have an IT person all the time. Or if you do, that IT person is literally doing everything, all of the IT. And then they also have to become a compliance expert. I mean, that's a lot.
We should have an official name for that IT person, because we always say that guy or that woman.
There's so many. There's so many
different. Think of a name other than that IT person.
IT guru, IT ninja.
IT ninja.
IT ninja.
Well, that'd be like a role. Like you go to LinkedIn and said, I want to be that IT person who has so much. All right. Anyway, so go ahead.
100 things all the time. And I've been that IT person. It's an experience. You learn a lot, but it can be overwhelming. And if you kind of tack on, all the CMMC / NIST 800-171 compliance on top of it, and then you're telling me I have to get it perfect the first time I do it, when I've probably never even touched this stuff before, that's just not realistic. So having a POAM makes infinitely more sense. It means that also on top of that, it's better for the auditors too, because then they can look and see, oh, this is where you had issues. This is where you address them. This is how you address them. This is who did it. This is when it was done. This is when it was closed out. Great. It really does give you a nice story to tell when auditors come in. So it makes way more sense to have POAMs than not. So I'm really glad they went with that with 2.0.
All right. So that's a truth number 2. That's
definitely a truth.
I'm going out on a limb there.
Yeah. It's a reasonable one. Definitely a truth.
All right. So number 3, one of the big things that people say was a change that improved compliance or made compliance easier in CMMC 2.0 was that they allowed for self-assessment. Like, did we hit the easy button on this, saying that was easy?
I'm going to say that, yes, it is true they are allowing self-assessments, but I'm going to say that making CMMC easier, I'm going to actually go out on a limb and say a lie on that.
Survey says
no. Yeah, it may make it easier in the short term, meaning that, oh, great, I don't have to pay somebody to come in and assess my organization. I don't have to have the DIBCAT come in if I'm a C3PAO. God knows I understand wanting to not have that. But the problem with it is the False Claims Act. So for everybody who's not aware of what the False Claims Act is.
Why don't you tell us what the False Claims Act
is? The False Claims Act, yes. It is something that a lot of people forget about, which is pretty amazing to me, since it's a very clearly stated act that if for some reason you are found to have essentially lied to the US government, and if you go into SPURS and put in your 100, let's say that you're like, I've self-assessed, I'm great. We are awesome. All of our security is wonderful. And you go into SPURS, which is
we met all 110 controls.
All 110 controls. We're incredible. We did it perfect the first time, right? Because we don't cheat on our diets, and we do it perfect 110 controls. Perfect.
And we work out every day.
We work out every day. No problems. So we go in, we put in our 110, assuming that, well, nobody's going to actually look at this, right? It's going to be fine. And maybe nobody does. Maybe they do. Who knows? Let's say for the sake of argument, they don't look at it. A year goes by, or 6 months, or what have you. You end up on a contract that's worth, let's say, $20 million. That's a pretty big deal for a small business. That's a huge deal, actually, for most small businesses. And then let's see, maybe a couple months into that contract, you end up having a security incident. And when the DoD comes to investigate that incident, they find out that you didn't have anywhere near the 110 controls that you said you had in place.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, that means that you have lied to the U.S. government, and they do not take that very well.
Yeah, I don't think they went to the George Washington School of Truth, right?
Indeed.
You cannot tell a lie.
Indeed. So the U.S. government does not look kindly on direct lying like that. So what can happen is, I believe it's 2 or 3 times. I think it's actually double the amount of the contract. So in our scenario, that $20 million that you won that contract for, the government can sue you for 40.
All right. So, is this kind of like don't look downstairs, there are monsters downstairs? Like, how much of this is actually going to come to fruition?
Oh, there are agencies. I think I looked up the other day, the Department of Justice, so the DOJ in fiscal year 2020 alone, I think claimed $2.2 billion on this act.
Ooh, that's a lot of cheeseburgers.
Yeah. And that is 1 year, one agency. That is not the whole government. That is one agency in 1 year. So it's definitely not something that is uncommon. And here's another thing to consider too. Even if, let's say for the sake of argument again, that you have this incident and there's even a whisper that you didn't do what you were supposed to do. Maybe the DOD, is forgiving for whatever reason, or whatever government agency, not just the DOD. But let's say that they're forgiving in some way. If it gets out, and it will, that you have this issue, there are going to be many government agencies who will just not want to deal with you.
Yeah, moms are not going to want their kids to play with you.
You got it. So
you're going to become the loser.
Pretty much. So it really does behoove everybody in the DIB to go ahead, A, because you're supposed to do, NIST 800-171 compliance anyway, and then B, there's the False Claims Act. It just makes sense to get somebody to come in and tell you, yes, you did a good job. I mean, we're not saying that you need to get like a full scale crazy like C3PAO DIBCAC audit, but I personally believe that having an outside organization telling you, hey, here's where you could improve is not a bad thing.
Right. Okay.